Hi, I'm Fahy, and at the end of last year, I created a list of 12 books that would self-destruct at the end of 2023. The concept behind this, I think it originated with Becca over at Becca and the Books. Basically, it's books that you are somewhat on the fence about and you're having trouble unhauling. So you give yourself 12 months. And if you haven't read the book in those 12 months, you have to unhaul it. When I first did this, I thought you had to unhaul it regardless, but obviously that was just me being silly, or perhaps misinterpreting the concept of what self-destruct meant. Regardless, so I put 12 books on the list, and we're getting close to the end of 2023. It's not that close, but also I like to try and save my December for rereads. So in real terms, I've got about 2.5 months to read these books. I'm not a fast reader. I am a determined and dedicated reader, but I'm not a fast reader. So these are quite a lot of books. So far I've unhauled one book without reading, and that is The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. I know this is a book that a lot of people enjoy, but the synopsis just wasn't doing anything for me, and I just felt like I wasn't really going to reach it, and I don't feel any issues with having gotten rid of it now. The other book that I have been able to tick off my self-destruct list, and this is where the fact that it wasn't just me that created this list. I had my best friend put some entries on this list as well. So my best friend had put this Savage song onto my list of books to self-destruct. I am a massive fan of Schwab, but before this year I hadn't read much of their work. So I guess this was a push to get me to read it. I've read everything that V. Schwab has published and absolutely love this. I've got a video coming out in a couple of weeks where I kind of break down every V. Schwab book. Obviously spoiler free because there's a lot and you may not have gotten to them. So if you want to know more about this book, check back in a couple of weeks, but I will say I really enjoyed it and there's no way this book is getting unhauled. So that's the 2 books that I've already tackled, and I've now got 10 more books that I need to read before the end of the year. So in order to help me do that, I read the first chapter of each of them, and today I'm going to be telling you my first impressions of these books, and we're going to be creating a ranking together so that I will start with the one that I have at number 1 and work my way down to number 10. However, if I run out of time, hopefully the ones at the bottom are ones that actually I don't feel too bad about unhauling without reading. So the 10 books are How Much of These Hills is Gold by C. Pam Zhang, I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston, Through Her Eyes by Sophie Fahy, The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke, From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, Little Woodford by Catherine Jones, Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Parris, Letters to the Lost by Brigid Kemmerer, House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland, and finally Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by Ashley Herring Blake. Okay, so now that you know what those 10 books are, I'm going to read my thoughts on the first chapter of each of these books. And I thought, let's make it a little bit of a game. So I will read the thoughts without telling you what book it is. And then after I finish reading the thoughts, I will put the book on screen. So if you want to guess along at home what book I'm talking about as I read my initial thoughts, go ahead and interact in the comments. But as I say, as soon as I finish telling you my thoughts, it will tell you what book it's in reference to. And then we are also going to create a ranking, I'm going to zoom the camera out a bit so that I've got more space at the edges. So let's do that now. Okay, now we've got a bit more space at the edges. So they're going to, and hopefully I get this the right way around, they're going to be 1 to 5 there and 6 to 10 there. I'm sorry if I've got that back to front, but I'm sure it makes sense. And as I look at my initial thoughts on the first chapter of each of these books, I will slot them into place, but things will potentially move around as I'm going. I hope this all makes sense. I've been talking for way too long, so let's get into my thoughts on the first book. So reading directly from my Storygraph journal, I think it's great that you can kind of write notes that are just for you as you are reading the book. So for this one, I've written, this was a very short first chapter, and I honestly don't feel as though I got any impression about what the story was going to be like, or even if I was going to like it. Colonialism is clearly a theme, but beyond that, just kind of zilch. I definitely won't be writing this book off just yet, but I'm also not going to be itching to pick it up. And that was my first thoughts on The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. This was one of the few that I had actually previously attempted to start and I guess hadn't vibed, and I suppose I wasn't vibing this time either. So for the moment, I think I'm going to put it in position number 8. And let's go on to the second one. The second one should be fairly obvious from the first word, but Poppy comes across as prudish and immature, but also like she's trying not to seem prudish. I guess it's what happens when authors try really hard to convey that the character is a virgin. I'm intrigued by the dynamics that seem to be being set up, and I want to know how each of the characters play a part. The first chapter was a little heavy on the world building and slightly info dumpy, but not to an intolerable extent. I do think this book will be an easy read and feel quick, although it is a chunk, so I don't think it's actually going to be quick. And that, as you may have guessed from the first word, was From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And I think I'm going to put that at number 4. I think it's something that I will probably enjoy. I haven't heard great things about further in the series, but at least for the first one, I think I am going to enjoy it. I'm a little intimidated by the length, but it seemed reasonable enough as it was. Next up, I do think the premise seems intriguing, especially as revenge being a motivator for the rest of the story is something that I enjoy in books. I will say that the judgmental tone of the book did feel pretty heavy-handed. I'm hoping that the emphasis on the way her drunkenness was making her act stupidly was just to establish how unable to consent she is to what I suspect is about to happen, but so far has come across as a little victim blamey, and honestly her so-called friends do not seem like good friends. I think it's too early to know if these are just meant to set up for the rest of the book, but so far it's made for a bit of an uncomfortable read. I think it's a difficult one to judge this one because there's definitely things that... Sorry, this was Through Her Eyes by Sophie Fahy. There were definitely things that I enjoyed about this book, or at least from the first chapter, but there were definitely issues that I picked up on. So I think it's going to have to go at number 6. I'm also realising that I'm having to keep these rankings straight in my head, so this could get interesting. My thoughts on the next book were very brief. I'm surprised at how much I enjoyed the first chapter and how thoroughly I was sucked into the story. It seems to be very much of the lit fic genre, and I'm guessing it's going to be more character focused than plot focused, but honestly that feels like a whole vibe that I could get into. And that was How Much of These Hills Is Gold by C-Pam Zhang, and I'm going to put that in number 2 actually. It was really surprising how quickly I was sucked into the story and how much I just wanted to know what happened next for these characters. So that makes it pretty high on my list. Okay, so next up, I can't say that the first chapter was capturing my interest at all. I actually found that I kept taking breaks as I was distracted. So many of the characters come across as unlikable and kind of like stereotypical boomers, but I'm not sure if the book is altogether self-aware of that fact. And then I've got the like grimacing emoji. I will pop it on screen, but like, you know what that one looks like. Of the books from my self-destruct list, this is the first one that I'm seriously considering not even trying with because it is just kind of dreadful. I think what I'll probably do is read the blurb so I can see if the story itself actually piques my interest, but it is the lowest priority on my self-destruct so far. So this one very comfortably goes in number 10, and it was Little Woodford by Catherine Jones. The first chapter is a bit longer than I would have liked, but it had my interest throughout. And the large font size made it easy enough to read. I suspect this is a book that I could fly through. I'm very interested in learning more of Grace and Jack's dynamic because there's an undercurrent of tension as Grace feels as though she is balancing on the edge of being Stepford perfect and dangerously controlled by Jack. I definitely don't think their marriage is healthy or normal, but I also wouldn't be surprised if things are a little less clear-cut than they first appear. And that was Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Parris, and I can't remember where I put From Blood and Ash, but I will put this one above From Blood and Ash. So I think that's 3 or 4. The next initial thought is again very short. It feels like this book is going to be compelling and read fast. 5 pages isn't really much to truly get a flavour of the story, but I like it enough to want to continue soon. Oh, that was Letters to the Lost and by Brigid Kemmerer. For some reason, the ISBN on Storygraph has, honestly, I think a prettier cover, but it is the ISBN for the book I'm reading, or the edition I'm reading. I just don't know why it's got a different cover. And I think I'm going to put this in number 3. So depending on how things were looking on that side of the rankings, I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be just below How Much of These Hills is Gold, but just above Behind Closed Doors. I hope that makes sense. The prologue and first chapter were okay. I was a little intrigued by what the story was setting out, but I was also pretty thrown by the fact that the book is set in London. I don't know why, but the book didn't feel like the kind of story that would be set in London. Maybe it felt more small-town America? I'm clearly not going to write it off completely, but it does make me feel And for this one, like, it's clearly not the number 10 spot. Like, nothing's going to knock the number 10 spot out. And I definitely don't think it's as low as the Unbroken. So I think it's going to have to be the number 8 spot. And that was House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland. I keep forgetting to say what the title of the book is before giving my ranking. But yeah. In number 8, we are going to have House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland. It only took me the first chapter to kind of remember what I had enjoyed so much about Delilah Green Doesn't Care. There's something about the way that Blake writes that sucks the reader in quickly and makes them want to continue. So, pretty obviously, this is Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by Ashley Herring Blake, and it is going to go in the number 2 spot. I feel like I'm going to end up shoving everything up, but it's going in the number 2 spot, so everything below is going to be shifted down by number 1. Honestly, I'm not sure if there is actually anything higher than a 1. Like, my initial thoughts weren't like, I have to reach for this immediately. I enjoyed it a lot, but nothing that impulsively I was like, this is clearly my number one. And apparently we've only got one more book left, so I think things are going to be shuffling about. So because we've only got one left, we clearly know this is I Kissed Shara Wheeler. And my initial thoughts were, I appreciate that before this book opens, it has an author's note regarding some of the possible triggers. I'm always a fan of author's notes or just simple content warning pages so that the reader can essentially approach the book with informed consent. The first chapter isn't completely drawing me in. I could see how it could have some promise, but Chloe is incredibly annoying and the writing feels a bit like it's trying too hard. I think that this will be an easy read and probably a quick read, but I would be surprised if it utterly blows me away. So for this one, I actually think I'm going to put it above House of Hollows. So everything that was above House of Hollow moves up by one to accommodate for this being, I think that would make it the number 7 or 6 place. This will all be on screen, so this is me just trying to keep it straight in my head. So those were all of my thoughts on the initial chapters of the 10 books on my self-destruct list that I still need to read before the end of the year. So what's going to happen next is for each of these books, as I said at the start of the video, I'm going to start with my number 1 position, which I think was Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail. And I'm going to create a video for each of them. It's just going to be an individual book review, and I'm going to be putting them out as I finish them. So I guess this is my cheeky plug for you to subscribe and hit the notification button if you want to see my thoughts on these books when those videos go up. I may not make it all the way to the number 10 spot, which was Little Woodford. Honestly, that's the only one that I 100% feel confident that if I don't get to, I won't be mad about getting rid of, but I'm going to try and make it all the way down to that book, so I guess we'll see. So in the meantime, let me know in the comments if any of these first chapter impressions surprised you and which of the books on my self-destruct list you would have started with first. But until next time, love you, bye.